lecture of the lecture series on the theme of From Gains to Losses, Roma Participation in the European Elections. Our today's speaker, Jamen Gabriela Hrabanova, a well-known human rights activist in Europe, and she contends with the protection, promotion, and advocacy of Roma rights in the government and civil society institutions on a national and European level. Ms. Gabriela serves as a director in European Roma grassroots organizations. That's a very important civil society institutions that fights against anti-Gypsyism, advocates for effective policies for Roma in Europe, and empowers Roma activists. She is a coordinator of the European Roma Policy coalitions, connecting with civil society and policy makers on the highest level, and one of the initiators is of the Alliance Against Anti-Gypsyism and the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent. Ms. Gabriela was also the director of Roma Office for the Council of Roma Minority Affairs in the Czech Republic. And the subject of today's discussions seeks to get around to the political condition of Roma in Europe. And as it is important to note here that Roma community is the largest minority of Europe, and it accounts, according to estimates, for around 2% of the entire European Union population. Though Roma have been a part of the European family for ages, yet they are severely underrepresented in the political landscape. The last month concluded elections of European Parliament revealed the feeble political standing of Roma communities in national and transnational governments, as well as how discriminatively they are represented in the public sphere. None of the Roma candidates occupied a seat out of 720 seats in European Parliament, despite the European Union Roma Strategy Framework 2020 and 2030 that fosters the Roma community's participation in political life at local, national, and European level. Despite the efforts of the European Union, the Roma community didn't notch up the seat in the European Parliament. Though the European Parliament is the supremely significant for Roma communities for becoming part of the decision-making process, highlighting the disparity, devising the policy interventions to address socio-economic and political exclusions. As we know that, as all of us aware that the Roma are downtrodden and horribly discriminated in day-to-day life across Europe or across the world, wherever they have been residing. So non-representation in the European Parliament that reflects on and compels to analyze the channels of political participation of Romani people and promotes the Roma political emancipations in the political parties. So today we have the speaker. I don't want to go further because we have very eminent speaker, and I believe that she will spell out what went wrong in the elections of European Parliament, and she would also address the challenges faced by the Roma politicians, as well as what are the approaches and what are the methods to improve the political representation of Roma communities in national and transnational governments. So thank you very much, Gabriela, for accepting our invitation and to deliver the 33 lecture of the lecture series. And now I would like to request Professor Dr. Prasananchuji. He is the professor in English department in National Law University, one of the very prestigious universities in India that is located in New Delhi. So,
hello, thank you very much, Dr. Zamir Anwarji. I hope you are already a doctor. And it's a pleasure that Ambassador Virendra Gupta ji has introduced me already and invited me to be a part of this event. All friends and my brothers and sisters, Roma brothers and sisters. I welcome you. It is indeed very thought-provoking, and I have, for people who are new, who I am meeting for the first time, I have been associated with Roma studies or Roma cause for a long time. And it is certainly a matter not only of human dignity, it is not just discrimination, it goes far beyond it. And democracy can also hide discrimination. It is not that only by giving democratic right we can um, do away with discrimination. At times it is inbuilt in the minds of the people, and it is difficult. It is difficult to fight it, but certainly the role of the academics, of the enlightened people, the intelligentsia, is to keep raising the issue, to highlight it, and to keep defeating the intellectual means by which the discrimination is hidden under big labels, under the institutions. To the world, the proclamations can be great. The proclamations of equality, liberty, justice may be there. But whether this is reaching every person, I have seen in Europe myself the situation. Zamir has also been regularly going to Europe. He is doing his PhD there. And especially in Czech Republic also, and France, I witnessed the situation of the Roma people. So I welcome Ms. Gabriela Hrabanova to present her speech and her findings. Welcome, madam.
Zamir, can I say a few words?
Sorry, Professor Prasananchuji. So now it's our pleasure and honor to have the President of Indian Council for International Cooperation, Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad. I humbly request, sir, to deliver the official remarks and the official welcome address. Thank you, sir. Please, sir.
No, thank you very much, Zamir, and thanks to Professor Prasananchu, who is the moderator and chair of our session this afternoon. We are very fortunate to have you, sir, to preside over this function. We are aware of your, excellent academic standing and your keen interest in the Roma affairs. I would like to welcome all of those who are present in the lecture today, in particular our keynote speaker, Ms. Jamen Gabriela Hrabanova. I've read your CV, and Zamir has told us about you. You have an outstanding credential. You've been tracking, advocating, and speaking for human rights of the Roma people. The equitable, what you are asking and what we are also asking is for equitable treatment of Roma community. We are all aware that Romas have a long history, running into hundreds of years of terrible persecution, oppression, and discrimination. Now, historically, it's a question of trying to understand the facts and the circumstances which led to the kind of insecurities which prevailed. But the most disturbing aspect of this is that this discrimination in one form or the other continues till date. And Professor said there are many ways of advocacy. Democracy by itself is not a guarantee that persecution or discrimination would be reduced or eliminated. But I think, the Romas have to speak for themselves. And I think European Parliament, for whatever it's worth, it's an organ, it's an institution which has a very strong voice in many areas, which would impact on the welfare and the condition of Romas. So I think it is a huge disappointment for us to note that these last elections in June have not returned even a single Roma, person to the European Parliament. As against, there were several others, in fact, several Roma people in the European Parliament earlier. So I think we will, our keynote speaker will take us through the dynamics of these European Parliament elections. What is it that has led to this situation? Is it just a coincidence, or is there something more that we should read into it? Romas stand at a point of time where I think a lot needs to be done in India. We are aware that Romas have originated from India, and so we share a keen sense of emotional bond with the Roma people. But unfortunately, very few people in India are aware of the Romas and are aware of the fact that Romas have originated from India. And very few people, likewise, empathize with the conditions of the Roma people. So I think it needs to be, widely disseminated. There needs to be a wide effort, and I think this is what we are trying to do through the Roma Center for Roma Studies and Cultural Exchange Center that we have created in the Antarashtriya Sahayog Parishad in the last few years. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining this lecture. It is our, continuing quest to try and understand more about what's going on with the Roma community. What are the historical circumstances? What are the present imperatives? What is leading to the continuation of this discriminatory treatment against Roma community in almost all people from Roma, on participating in our conferences. So I think it is a matter of concern. What we've seen happen in the European Parliament elections, and I think sustained efforts are required by all concerned, all well-wishers of the Roma community, but first and foremost, the Roma community itself. Now, I just like to add one more point, is that the European Parliament election is not an end-all and be-all of, kind of exercising political rights, because I think far more important is the individual country elections. Romas are scattered, distributed in different European countries, and I think they must work on gaining greater say and in the voices of their own parliaments, of their own country's parliaments. So I would stop here and request our keynote speaker to kindly give us the benefit of her keynote address. Thank you very much. Professor Prasanshu, you take it on from here.
I am really sorry, sir, that there was a small faux pas. But anyway, the content is more important. For an academic like me, the order is not that important. So we are looking forward and eagerly to listen to the erudite views of Ms. Gabriela Hrabanova. And we would like to have a close look at the situation in Europe right now, especially about the Roma rights, whether these elections, according to you, are going to increase representation and rights, or whether it is not going to be sufficiently effective. So, but let us hope for the best. And ARSP, since its inception, has been doing whatever it can do with its limited means. I hope that our means are also increased so that our intentions can be matched by the means. Thank you. We are eagerly looking forward to your address, madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the warm welcome that you are giving to me, but also for the work that you are doing and for being supportive to the Roma in Europe for so many years already. I had a chance to see it a little bit from the distance. I saw that you had already many great speakers and great Roma personalities that were joining these lectures before me. Number 33 is also a very beautiful number, so I'm happy that finally I joined and I could share with you a little bit of the knowledge and share the experiences that I'm thinking from my position. I prepare a little presentation. I don't know how long exactly it will take, so we have to see. But so please, also you can stop me if I'm too fast speaking or going a little bit off the topic that you are interested. Let me start with maybe like a little bit more of the kind of general introduction. Yeah, so a little bit more on general situation of how can I move the screen here? Voila. So a little bit or the general introduction about the work that we do in the Ergo Network. Then, of course, about the work in the European Parliament and also the work that we did before the elections, because I think that something that we invested before the elections, the way we work with the European political parties, it's also influencing how we're going to work after the parliament, with the new parliament. I also have outlined a few challenges, which I think they are very general challenges, but might actually kind of also shape a little bit the ideas on towards the direction we want to go and what it's like for us to kind of the responsibilities we are taking in, or the direction that we are taking in engaging with the Roma people on this political empowerment in Europe. So yeah, maybe just I already had my own introduction. So I'm Gabriela Hrabanova, the director of the Ergo Network. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, but last 14 years I'm already in Brussels. I'm leading the organization at Ergo Network. We are still saying that we are quite a young organization. We were established in 2006 by a small group of NGOs. So it's really like a grassroots initiative. So practically those organizations, they just wanted to share these everyday realities of our communities. And we knew that before, it was like when the European Union was enlarged. And back in 2004, the first group of Eastern European countries stepped into the European Union. And then later in 2007, the rest, we could actually see that the Roma agenda was not really represented by Roma so much at this political arena. And this organization actually wanted to do more. So they created themselves as a sort of a network. With very slowly, very soon enough, they established an organization and an office in Brussels. So practically being there, being present to all these big happenings in Brussels. Today, we bring together more than 30 members, Roma and pro-Roma organization from all over Europe. And actually, we have 32 members. We just had a general assembly 2 weeks ago. And they are coming from all over Europe. So, but we also have a Western Balkan, we have Turkey, Ukraine, United Kingdom. So we are really making sure that the sort of a voice is being represented. We enlarged a little bit now to the Scandinavia. Now we have a new member from Finland and Sweden. We didn't have until this year. So we are trying to make sure that the Roma voice is really represented. We also work with Roma travelers in Ireland, but also the Gypsies travelers in England. So really kind of putting together the different voices, which of course the diversity might be sometimes difficult, but it also brings a big value because we have this kind of a stronger voice and a bigger mobilization behind us. And we are mobilizing based on the philosophy, it's on active citizenship, shared responsibility, and grassroots empowerment. And we really, like with our members, they're convincing that the policymakers can make the positive change for Roma. And that it's possible only when anti-Gypsum is recognized and tackled as a root cause for inequality and exclusion, and when Roma can take part an active civic life as equal stakeholders. We are saying, and you already said it, Professor, that Roma has to be agents of their own life. We have to make sure practically that we are responsible for our lives and that there are means for it. And to achieve this, we bridge the gap between the grassroots realities and the policy making. We advocate for better policies and policy recommendations on national European level. We organizing public campaigns, building the capacity of Roma activists, and provide space for networking, mutual learning. We really believe this is important. We are also achieving this through the support of the European Commission financial support. So there are different grant schemes that we are applying for, but also we need co-financing from the public sphere or the private sphere actually. So we are really trying to make sure that we are combining the resources, and we can also financially support those organizations who are on the ground, who are actually having a direct touch with the communities and can mobilize and empower those people on the ground, but at the same time bringing the reality to us. So we engage our members in small researches, in case studies, but also in coalition building and their national advocacy, so they get all the support from us to make sure that we can run the network, which is based on the real membership. At this moment, we are 10 people in the ERGO office in Brussels. So we are mostly, in majority of us are Roma, of Romani origin. Myself also, I'm actually half Roma. My mother, she's Roma, my father was Czech. And we are really making sure that that we are taking our responsibility. So the Roma staff is majority, the ERGO staff is majority Roma, and the board, it's also majority of Roma people deciding and having the responsibility over the organization. And it is very important for us. So that's why also when we are doing this work in the European Union here, the participation and Roma participation in particular, it's the kind of key push for us. I'm here to talk a little bit about this parliament, like the work here in Brussels. Actually, I could have do a little bit more general introduction, but I think it's important, you already said as well, that how parliament is important for us. It's not only the parliament, but it's also at the European Commission and the Council of Europe. The European Council meaning the representation of all the member states, because we are working with them very closely. I actually don't have a slide on it, but so there was this recent elections in the parliament, and the parliament is the co-legislative body. They say that about 70% of legislations, it's coming from the European Parliament. Of course, all it's prepared by the Commission. So all these relevant documents, which are relevant for Roma, but also for the general society, it's actually the expertise is being done, kind of being produced in the European Commission, and then it's being negotiated with the European Parliament very often. And but the Parliament has quite strong power. And this is for us important to make sure that we actually have our people in the parliament, that we have someone who would actually push for making sure that there are resolutions, that there are specific researches, that there are self-initiated reports that in the past were coming mostly from the members of the European Parliament. They were of Romani origin. We also have a Roma unit at the European Commission. So under the Directorate of DG Justice, there is a Roma unit, which also has Roma employees. So they are Roma working within this unit. And they are the one who are coordinating and kind of giving a guidance to the member states when it comes to the implementation of the national Roma strategy. So this is very important institution, because they are the ones collecting information from the member states. They cannot push the member states because practically the EU Roma framework, it's a gentleman agreement. So it's more like we have to make it working, but it's not that there will be some punishment. The punishment is only if there is non-existent Roma strategy, then the funding cannot come. So it's kind of, they call it the conditionality. So the EU funding is being conditioned by existence of different strategies, and Roma strategy, it's one of them. So practically now we have a situation where every member states who have a relevant Roma population, they have their own Roma strategy. And within the strategy, there is also allocated funding. And within this funding, there is also a person, they call it National Roma Contact Point, which is actually responsible for the implementation. So we work with the European Commission, who are working with this National Roma Contact Points, and then our members, they are working with this National Contact Point on the national level. We are calling it a sandwich approach. So we push from the EU and our members are pushing from the national level. So we are making sure that practically the changes, it's happening at the national level. But sometimes even when the national level, they have a good strategy, the implementation lacks at the local level. So we still have to mobilize our members on the local level to make sure that participation, that kind of local participation, actually, it's finally the one that's make the difference. I just make a slide for us to see what we had in the past. So these were the practically in February, actually it shouldn't be February, it was until the election, until the June 2024. We had 4 members of the European Parliament. Originally there were 3, but towards the end, in February, we were joined by Patricia Caromaya from Spain. Someone dropped from the list and she got inside. It's also interesting to see that even among the members of the parliament, we have a diversity. Because they were all in from the different countries of the Europe. They were also all in the different groups. So, for example, Livia Jaroka, she was first in EPP, but then she was unattached because she's coming from the Fidesz political party in Hungary, which was also sometimes it was not very easy for us because, of course, the politics of the Fidesz in Hungary, it was not liked by our members, but still Jaroka was a very important figure because she was the one also promoting a lot of the Roma culture and Roma agenda in the European Parliament, but maybe from a little bit different perspective. Petr Polák, he was in the European People's Party. So again, it's a very specific political party. It's more like center-right. So you could also see that his own work was also influenced by this political party. And it's always like this. The people are also coming not as Roma only, but they're also coming as the politicians. Romeo Franz, he was from Germany and he was in the Greens. So again, the Greens, they are historically very kind of very open for the Roma. But regardless to say, like Petr Polák did one of the most important resolutions on Roma, actually too, one of the segregated children in education and one general on I think it was on housing. So he put a lot of important issues on the agenda as well. And the last one was Patricia Caromaya. She came only for six months, so it was not a long cooperation, but she was in the left, and then they supported us very much in the work in the European Parliament around the Roma Week. So, and she made a very successful conference on the memory of the Romani Holocaust. She also invited some survival of Romani Holocaust to come to the European Parliament. And she brought academics and politicians to practically speak on the situation and making sure that that this situation would never repeat again. So that was the Never Again was the title of the conference. It was a very successful conference organized during the Roma Week. So you can see that by having the members of in the European Parliament of Romani origin, I could have prepared the list of their work, but that's actually a lot of research to done as well. But everybody contributed with their work, and they always had Roma on the agenda. Although they were kind of within the majority political parties, they were always pushing for the Roma agenda, making change, creating coalitions and allies among the others. And I think what is important that because they are all from different countries, different political parties, we still manage to have this cross-party cooperation. I think this is the most crucial thing for the Roma agenda here in Europe. It's that it's a party blind practically. We cannot work with the far right, of course. This is unacceptable for us. But otherwise, the central political parties, we have to work across the political parties also to kind of create the majority, create the alliances, and this is how we work. And practically because each of these these members of this Roma in the political parliament, they were in different countries, it also made us easier to practically reach out to those political parties. These are the members in the past that we had. So practically, yes, if I go maybe from the down up, so the very, very first Roma, the first known Roma in the parliament was Juan de Dios Ramirez Heredia, and he was from Spain. He served several terms. He was in SND. He was very strong also figure, not only in the parliament, but also in the Spain. These are the people that I'm sure about. There were also few they were kind of not very visible Roma. Like we used to have one Roma from UK. He was actually running for the far right, so which was very interesting. So, but these are like the kind of known and also kind of those who promoted the Roma agenda within the parliament. So Livia Jaroka, she came in 2004. Then also Olivia Victoria Mohaci. So there was a year we had two members, two women from Hungary. Livia Jaroka continued 2009-2014, and then we had a strong year in 2014-2019, or strong period, which we had a member from Romania, Damian Dragici, Soraya Post from Sweden, Livia Jaroka, and then we also were joined by Roma of France. Interestingly, Livia Jaroka, she became a vice president of the European Parliament. So we actually had a Roma woman in one of the most prestigious and important positions of the Europe. Like being a vice president of the European Parliament is actually a very, very strong position. And although she was in such a strong position, the strongest for us and the biggest ally was Soraya Post. She's a Roma from Spain. From Sweden. Actually, she's also now she's a chairperson of the Ergo Network board. So I still work with her very closely. But she was the one that really brought a lot of changes. She actually made one of the first resolutions on anti-Gypsyism. I think it was in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. It was a very strong resolution fighting anti-Gypsyism. And in this resolution, actually, I would sign everything up. It was really like, she actually made the European parliamentarians agreed on language that is also very much acceptable by the Roma, by the civil society. And she worked with us on making this resolution happen. And she's also the one that started the Roma Week, which is an event which is happening every year around the 8th of April in Brussels, and it's run by Roma, organized by Roma, and with Roma. And Roma are practically the one leading the agenda and working closely with the European Parliament and European Commission, Council of Europe, and other organizations that are part joining. You already saw those we were having in this period until 2024, and no one is elected in 2024. Like really, like from. I think that's I call it why I call it from the gains to the losses. So we had achieved a lot with having the Roma people in the Brussels on this important position, but this very little we had, we are also kind of it's endangered. Maybe just to mention that there were candidates on the elections. Czech Republic, they had 3 candidates: David Beňák, Ivana Batiani, and Jaroslav Miko. None of these was elected practically. Petr Polák was running. He had very low support, unfortunately. Bogdan Csaba from TISA, this is a Hungarian political party. He was the closest. He was 8 on the candidate list and 7 got inside. And I think this is because there was also an announcement of the leader of this political party that he would not go to the parliament. So we were all hoping he will get to the European Parliament, but that's the last news that I received. He's not getting. There was Vanya Grigorova from Bulgaria. She was also a leader of her political party, also didn't succeed. And then Stankovic Král, he was number 9, and I think 8 actually got elected. No, he was number 9, and I think only 3 got elected. So he was not really in a good position anyways. But everybody's speaking that it was a great experience for them. Practically having experience to run in the elections, being engaged in the mainstream political parties, it was for them also a life-changing situation. So practically for the individual empowerment, this was something that actually made a difference for them in their work. And because they were very supportive for the political parties, like especially I talked with a lot with David Beňák and this Dejan Stankovic Král, they are now seeing that maybe next position or in the next election, they might actually get better position because they were like very party supportive, and that the party would also kind of show them in the future that they might actually be maybe better positioned. Because of course, I mean, in the case of Dejan, he was number 9, and we knew that 2 or 3 will get inside. So he was running with the knowledge that he would not be elected. With David Beňák, with Czech Republic, it was a little bit different because we were thinking that he will jump the people. He was number 17 at the end, which was very, very, very like far away number. But he actually jumped until number 10, and 8 were getting to the European Parliament. So there was some power of Roma, which actually kind of helped him to move. So they were circling him on the political on the elections list, and he was moving a little bit forward. So this is the new parliament. So we see that there are some changes. We know that the Greens, they lost, and the left, they lost a lot. I didn't see the latest negotiations, who's coming where. They are still coming. The negotiations are still talking on. There is still a danger that the EPP would go in the coalition with the far right, which would make it very difficult for us because EPP was a very strong partner. But we are working practically across the parties, but more like normally it would be from the EPP to the left. Yeah, so this ECR ID and non-attached, this is a no-go for us. And we have to also see how the EPP would position themselves. And this is like the political kind of agenda, because we have to keep the agenda also relevant for Roma, right? We cannot work with those who would be like generally against the Roma inclusion and etc. So this is for us. This is just a little bit of the timeline that we are working with. So there were the elections, so we already passed important milestones. We were engaged in all those parts, right? So we were working with the political parties when they were making their political manifesto, when their candidate lists were negotiated. We used all our powers. For example, again, I'm from the Czech Republic, so I was negotiating a lot with the Czechs, trying to get support for those people who were running to get better position. Actually, didn't work out so well, but we have to still work on it for the future. We were working on we had our own manifesto, our own pledge. I will show you a bit later for the slides. So we were kind of making sure that the Roma are mentioned in the other political parties' manifesto, or that they are at least sensitive to the minorities, so that they would actually already claim in advance, like in their political program, with what they are entering to the European Parliament, that they would actually have the kind of Roma specific or kind of minority sensitive agenda. We didn't do it alone. We were also having coalitions with other important networks, which are here in Brussels, and they are working with other minorities. The new parliament is actually meeting, I think it's next week or 2 weeks, 16 and 19 July. So it's still in a few days. They will be meeting. Everything should be decided by now to which group they are joining. And still, they have now all these introductory circles, and they have to understand also what kind of work they want to do, in which committee they want to join, what kind of intergroup they want to support, etc. I will talk about the intergroups a little bit later. This is the intergroup that we had until now. This is European Parliament Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup. It calls ARSP. And it exists to promote racial equality, counter racism, and educate about non-discrimination in the work of European Parliament. But I think it's important that intergroups are really, it's different from political parties or political groups. That's people who are connecting on the same view. So there is also children's rights intergroup, LGBTQI, anti-corruption, disability, fighting poverty, environment. There are all kinds of intergroup. But this one was very specific because it had Roma in the leadership. So Petr Polák and Patricia later and Romeo Franz, they were practically the co-chairs of this intergroup, and Roma were very important on the agenda. So through this intergroup, so when there was a voting on specific issues, the intergroup could mobilize the votes of its members. They had about 200 members. And the chairs could mobilize, or they can initiate some of those important points on the agenda in the European Parliament. The intergroup also had a Roma coordinator. It was Jelena Jovanovic. She was practically working as a coordinator of this group, working with, it was not only Roma issue, it was also anti-Muslim hatred, Oh, there is more actually. Yeah. So this anti-racism agenda in general was worked in this intergroup. Right now, we are gathering the support for this intergroup. It seems there are 2 members of the parliament who are willing to support this intergroup. And it seems that it might fly, but I think the more will be visible in September, because now it's really like all this background work, it's happening practically right now. Just one more timeline, which I think it's sometimes not so visible that this is happening. It's that the European Parliament is also affecting the elections of the new Commission. Yeah, so the new commissioners, they are being nominated by the member states. But it's also affected by the political leading party and those who were successful in the European Parliament elections. Yeah, so they are the one nominating their kind of representatives. Then there is a negotiation, and then there is also the kind of questionnaire. So I call it, or we call it here, like it's a grilling. So there is a group of members of the Parliament who have a set of questions prepared for the new commissioners, and they're asking them these questions on like a public forum. And this is very important for us again, because we make lobby and we make sure that some of those questions for the relevant commissioner, whether it is a DG NEAR for the enlargement or DG employment for the employment, poverty and social issues, or until now the equality commissioner, that we would make sure that they would also ask Roma related questions. Yeah. So again, so we want to know their standpoints ahead. We want to kind of make them aware. So this is part of our advocacy, part of our campaigning that we are doing. And so that's why we are also working with those parliamentarians already now, making sure that the commission, you know, kind of would, the new commissioner would also kind of be questions in this regard. And then at the end of the first quarter, I think it'll be like end of September, October, we would actually have the new commissioners assuming the office. But for example, for us, it's still not even clear whether the Commission for Equality would continue. So now we do a very strong lobby. One, it's for the ARDI, for the Anti-Discrimination and Diversity Work Intergroup, and the other one, it's for the Equality Commissioner. So these were the demands that we were kind of putting together. Maybe I go just through them quickly. They're also available on our website, just for you to have a little bit of understanding where we stand in this political dialogue that we are having with the different political parties, right? So we stand for a true European Union of equality, free of racism. I mean, this is very important for us. And we have to make sure that the mainstream political parties remain committed and they ensure that the fight against everyday discrimination, structural and institutional racism, is prioritized in our European Union. We are also always being very specific on countering anti-Gypsum as a specific form of racism, because I think it's still important to understand that there is, people say, I am not a racist, but I don't want the Roma as the neighbor, you know? So there's still this very, very kind of hidden, very specific racism when it comes to the Roma. And I think this is this sort of a dangerous one that we have to make sure that we tackle. So that's why we talk about it. And although we promote the racism-free society, we also promote specifically countering anti-Gypsism as a specific form of racism. I don't see now the higher one. Oh, I don't know what's written there up. So yeah, so to engage with the political, to engage with the racial group, so to promote Roma participation. We have to counter hate speech and hate crimes on all levels, but especially we have to have a strong leadership in this. We have to face policing free. We have to have police free of prejudices and racism. This is also very important for us. And then we have to have a decriminalization of migration, because this is what is happening sometimes, and it's also very dangerous. Institutions and parties, they have to represent the diversity in Europe. And very often, and I think that this is sort of the most sad reality, is that the European Parliament and the other institutions, they are not reflecting the diversity of Europe at all. We are already having like several minorities, several national minorities, like the Europe, it's very colorful and very diverse, and practically we have very unified European Parliament with mostly white Europeans. And I think this is that we have to really push forward and making sure that the political parties, they are diversifying themselves already and they are reflecting the society as such. Then, of course, improving economic development through the better inclusion of racial minorities, maximizing the EU funding to tackle racism and safeguarding civic spaces, because we still face a shrinking spaces for the civil society. There is no support for the watchdog. Practically some countries, like in Hungary, Poland, the situation for the civil society is very hard. And of course, we also want to ensure the environmental justice. We had it signed by several organizations. It was quite a short open call, but many organizations supported it. And we actually negotiated with the political parties, as I said before. So we had meetings, we were invited to the closed door meetings with the Greens, with the Left, with the SND, with EPP, and we could actually have, I think with the Greens we were the most successful, but that's historically they are the one more open, with the Left a little bit, and the others, they have more like general talk about the economic inclusion. They're more like on the general terms of when it comes to this kind of liberal political approaches. So far, so good. I don't see many faces, so it's me talking mostly. Let me just check if there's a kind of check, people check. Yeah, okay. So, yeah. So I just also said that I would outline a few of the challenges. So you see, for example, this photo, it's from the Roma week. So it's only Roma around the table. No? So I always feel so nice when they're meeting in the European Parliament. We actually managed to have a Roma sitting in these positions of important people. But now as a guests, and this year it will be mostly guests, before at least some of them were members of the European Parliament. So I think that generally, the Roma agenda, it's also very hard for us to kind of work and promote and have this, how to say, this kind of considered attention by the important stakeholders to the Roma agenda in general, because when it comes to the elections, there are much more challenges. So we had generally very low voter turnout. There is a lack of information and awareness in general. The EU, it's a very complex issue. So also not always everyone can actually understand why it is important to vote. There are many language and communication barriers. Also, there is this national and European focus. It's very, very difficult. Euroscepticism, fragmentation and populism, disinformation, and especially among Roma, the disinformation, it's a quite significant problem, because it's just one way of receiving the information, but this critical thinking, kind of analyzing the information, it's very often missing. There is voter suppression and manipulation. When it comes to Roma, it's very, very, very strong. Lack of youth engagement. Then migration and identity politics. We also realize that we might not have so many stateless people in the European Union as such when it comes to the Roma, more, for example, in the Western Balkan. But there are many people who have internally migrating in the different places of their countries, and practically then they don't have an access to the electorate, to the elections, because they would have to vote in another city, but they didn't receive the documents, or they don't know how to get for the documents, etc. So these might be also some of the problems, and of course violence as electoral tool in campaigning, and actually taking Roma as a scapegoats, right? So very often Roma are the problem and not the solution. So it's also, and nobody's counting on the Roma voices practically, no? Because they are afraid it will take their votes out. We also have, we are facing a very difficult time in general, the impact and outcome of the war in Ukraine, economic stability, prosperity in Europe, bold-faced rise of the right votes, and we could see that actually this was a very big problem in these elections. We lost a lot in France, in Germany. These big countries, they were always very supportive when it comes to this sort of a center-left approach. We lost a lot because of the far right. The idea of the future of the EU is also not very clear, and the tensions between nationalism and EU integration, I mentioned it, and there is many more, right? But it's also for us somehow to see at least the way that I'm thinking about it, that we are also part of the bigger picture. We are still, of course, we are saying that Roma are the most discriminated group, and we make a very important target group when it comes to these policies. But generally, the problems are also like there are other problems as well. No, so we have to face that some of these, especially the war of Ukraine, practically shift also the allocation of the resources to work with the people in general and shifted the attention. Yeah, how we can what could influence the debate in the European Parliament in the future now? Yeah, it's an important issue. I mean, we have to act always. I made it just for me. It's just like this. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. But I hope that you see that we in ERGO, we are really doing. So what we are practically doing now, we are building a list of friendly members of the European Parliament, working with them. We will work with them in the committees. There are 3 committees that we work with. It's the LIBE, CULT, and FEM. LIBE is the justice one. CULT, it's culture. FEM, it's the feminine. It's on the gender and women especially. We are building coalitions with other groups and NGOs to be stronger in our advocacy. So we have allies. As just yesterday, I signed a letter that was going for the Commission of Equality. We signed together with Amnesty International. I mean, there's other big organizations that we really like. They're trying to get along with those bigger actors here in Europe, other networks. They're also asking the same things, and we are kind of supporting the processes of the appointment of the new commissioner, concretely this advocacy for the Commissioner for Equality. And we are also building the new RD. So we are in contact with the coordinator, this Jelena Jovanovic, but we are also building this kind of alliances across the political parties to make sure that we have enough members of the parliament to support the intergroup, because all the intergroups are not really clear. Their existence, it's endangered. So we have to just make sure that we lobby for it. And to make this, we have to be present in the European Parliament. So this is very important for us. And when it comes to the mobilization on Roma, I mean, there might be some other things here, but this is just a very kind of the kind of outline of the things we are doing. Of course, there is still many more meetings and a lot of analysis of the situation. I think generally this is what I just also kind of outline, or what has to be done when it comes to the Roma. And I think generally we have to support political empowerment of Roma women and men, to kind of understand why this is important. We also, I mean, myself, I was running 2 times in the local elections. I was very young. My first elections, I was running when I was 21, and the other one I was, I think, 27. I also stepped into the governmental office as an official. I was actually working as a director for the Roma office in the Czech Republic. So again, kind of I stepped into the public official position to make sure that actually we try to kind of move the things from inside, because I think it's not only that we have to we can criticize and we can do the advocacy and lobby, but we also have to have people prepared to actually take those positions and take those places. And if we start with the young people entering not only the politics, but the political parties, the youth clubs of the political parties, they can actually work their way out much more easier when it comes then to their position on the candidate list, because this is our biggest trouble. We have Roma, we might actually have them on the candidate list, but the internal fight for the position on the candidate list is so strong that only those who are really very much being engaged with the party and showing that they work for the party, they are the one that actually kind of merit the good places, right? So, or someone who would bring a lot of people for them to vote. With Roma, it's never sure, because sometimes the Roma can make the difference, but sometimes they may also not make the difference. So this is not really like a card we can play for the full potential. It's not used practically of thing. We have to support the Roma participation in general and building political and citizenship responsibility among Roma. And I think this is the responsibility, like to make sure that we can vote and we can make a difference with our with our voice, with the ballot actually counts. Every single one counts, and this is what we actually can do the difference. Yeah, I think that's actually from me, from this general overview already all. And I'm very happy to stay here a little bit more for any other area or agenda that you are interested, or any questions for you to answer. I hope that was already useful, and that anything you are interested in, just ask me to tell you.
Mr. Gretton Huxen, you have a question. Perhaps we can have the questions, Mr. Zamir.
Yes, President Anchuji, yes, you can. There is a question answer session.
Okay.
And those who have any question, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more than a question. I want to say, first of all, thank you very much, Gabrielle, for a very great presentation. You're probably the only person that's got all this in her head, and that's hugely invaluable to all of us. Very valuable to all of us. Okay, the things I would bring up, though, I'm very surprised that so little was spoken of and has been achieved on the level of language rights. After all, Romanes is a big language in Europe. It's bigger than many of the other small countries. I know we have dialect problems, standardizations, but nevertheless, we should be getting far more on the language side. In fact, help to bring the language perhaps together in a more standard form, and then its introduction in schools would be easier. That's one thing. Secondly, of course, you're talking from Brussels, so you're talking for Europe, whereas I advocate that we get cracking now and build ourselves into a global movement and make take every advantage of being all over the world, so that the scattered diaspora becomes something that can be uniform, better united through the internet. There's no technical problems about that. We can do it. And in Europe itself and everywhere, I always fight against the word minority, since we are a large nation and should be seen as Roma nation rather than anything in the way of a ethnic minority and so on. I believe that because the situation is so critical in the world today, climate change, wars, everything that's going on, that we need to move from the rather theoretical anti-racism fight that goes on year after year laboriously and turn to more direct action. I would go into that if anybody's interested, but direct action is perhaps obviously speaks for itself. And the last thing is, I'm myself pressing and working for, in recent years, what we call the democratic transition, which would mean that people like Gabriela would have a mandate from a Roma electorate, which will give you, I would love you to have this, to have a mandate and have people behind you so that you can speak on behalf of, in the secure mind that, you know, thousands have voted for you. And so we are building a machine that will make this possible, and we intend to use it and bring it out for its proper use at the next World Romani Congress, which is planned for Brazil next year. So that's my contribution. Thank you for having me here, and thank you, Gabriela, for your presentation.
Gabriela, Ms. Gabriela, will you like to respond to that?
Yeah, very gladly. And thank you, Gratan, very much for your comment, and also for acknowledging that it was useful for you as well, because I know you have a lot of information about what is happening in Europe already. About the language rights, you are totally right. There was very little done, and it's also somehow, I think that we are somehow, the way I'm looking at it, we are kind of growing in this sort of the kind of needs agenda, right? So, for example, in Ergo, we did a lot social anti-poverty employment agenda, no? Because this was something that was very important for us and for the general agenda, because there were also money allocation. We want to make sure that the funding is going the right direction, that make sure, so kind of taking this advocacy priority, like if we have EU social fund, which actually distributing a lot of money, and then the money is not reaching the right people, then we just kind of thought that we have to make sure that we make the advocacy in the direction, and we kind of stream it, and we kind of make the lobby here that they would actually understand the needs of the Roma, allocate the money. And now they are even negotiating, Commission, it's negotiating with the member states to say, you have to have a Roma indicator. You have to make sure you have an impact on the situation because the reports are not good, etc., etc. So that was like the way we go through it. Then we do generally the anti-Gypsyism and anti-racism, which language might fall under it, but it's still a little bit difficult. Now we are trying a little bit the digital environment because it's also a huge agenda. But with the language, I've been like only a few times engaged, and that it's and that's I just found it a little bit dangerous also for us of who it's running those initiatives. So it was the Hungarian minority from Slovakia who were supporting. So there is a resolution on the minority languages. And one of the languages, it's also Roma language. So they invited us, we made consultation. It was when Soraya was in the parliament. So we passed the resolution on the minority languages. There is mentioned Roma language. But the thing is that it came from a kind of difficult position. It was a Libe committee, so it was on justices. But Soraya commented, they invited us. I was even a speaker on this kind of presentation of the resolution. But I just found it interesting from where it's coming, you know. So it's also hard sometimes to find allies, especially because the diversity within the Europe, it's not represented. So all the other groups which would actually can make the voice of the minorities and the minority languages are not present because they are not elected. You know, so you always have to have this sort of critical mass for to push something. No, for me, for example, now I have a very big task for the next. I hope at least 1 year would be enough, because we face now with the European Parliament Roma Week, we face practically a problem which I didn't realize before it exists, and I'm really bluntly open for everyone, so you can see that this is something that really makes my heart very heavy. It's that if you hire from the European Parliament an official translation service, which would translate Spanish, German, you know, whatever other EU language, you cannot have a Romani translation because it's not official language. But if we have only Romani translation, we can have the Romani translation. And because for years I was only having Romani translation because I didn't need it German or Spanish, but now with the event of Patricia Caramaya on the Holocaust, she wanted to have a German for the survival and Spanish for some Spanish participants. We actually couldn't add Romanes. And it was for the first time I actually faced this situation. I said, like, so I tried to mobilize still Patricia, but it was like 2 months to the end of the European Parliament. So we couldn't do much. But I'm taking this at least as one of my, so we have to recognize Roma language as one of the official languages, but then we might have a problem that we would not have trained interpreters in the system of the parliament. So we still have to create the capacities of our people to pass some exams and to make sure, or that would also mean that everything has to be translated in the Romanes and they might not even want to have this, you know? So there is like a, at least for me, this is like a very huge topic. So we have to somehow dose it, and any support, even I think from the global movement would be important, but also we need this kind of push from the Roma organizations to make sure that at least this is done, because we have Roma translations in the official meetings at the European Commission and the European Parliament, but it's the only one, or somewhere aside. No, it's like on the OSCE meetings, there is like all the languages and the Roma booth, which is setting a little bit aside. So I think this is still something we have to work on.
Well, Google, you notice that Google now offers a translation. That's a start. That's a
It's a start, yes.
I tried using it this morning, first time.
Yeah, I also did. I actually translated, I think
Yeah.
Ashmet Zalovsky wrote something and I understood the translation. So it was at least something. It's not, I mean, it's not, I'm from Czech, so it's not the Romanes that we would use, but I think it's a good start. And for the global movement, you know, Gretan and just for the others, there was this conversation that happened also in the past, on the beginning of the year. So we try to be involved and supportive. So you just, I think we are too busy with the Europe, but I mean, if there is our capacity, you have the support, of course, Gretan.
Thank you. Can I just say one other thing completely off the record? But Banco Ruda is here. Banco Ruda is with us, I see. I just see his name here. A delegate from the First World Romani Congress who took a tremendous part in the early days of the movement. I wish he would say something. I would love to hear from Banco. I wonder if Banco can hear me say this. I would love to greet you, Banco, and see you again for the first time for so many years.
While she unmutes and says something, I would say that it was all music to me when we were talking of language. And Mr. Zamir here and I think we are two votaries for looking or approaching or tackling the problem from the linguistic perspective. Language is not just language, it is also culture, and maybe intertwined with culture if we take a less extreme position. And culture and identity are the basis of your movement, your cause, actually. So, from a very Indian perspective, as I interpret it, we do not emphasize on race or even other such biological marker, but cultural identity. I think that is the official line of Indianness here. So I think that can be a model. And what is the marker of that Indianness or of any community of Romaness? Perhaps it is one of the very important things has to be the culture and language. So thank you for raising this point. If there is any other question, I would welcome it. Otherwise, I have a few observations from this very enlightening lecture. It was very engrossing. I enjoyed it. If there is anyone else who would like to.
Yes.
Yes.
Person Anshuj, if you allow me, I have one remark.
You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for your illuminating speech and the very comprehensive lecture. Out of my curiosity, I have a questions. Not a questions. It's my curiosity, and being into the Romani study, as a student of Romani study. So, do you think, and what is your say on the role of International Romani Union or other international Romani organizations which fail in assuming the role of the protector or the beacon of the particle representations of the Roma communities? So do you think that these institutions and organizations fizzled out in performing their duties and fail in improving and enhancing the channels for increasing the Romani representation in the political sphere, not only in European Parliament but also in the national, on the national level or in the respective European countries. So, as the Grattan is here, that is he is the one of the initiators of the Romani Congress, and Vanko Rogda is also here. I don't know whether he's listening to us or not. So these are these people are these people are the pillars and the legend of the Romani movement. So now, how you see in the 2024 the relevance of such organization and institutions which are not justifying in their duties, or what the lacking? Because I think that if these institutions and organizations are strong enough, they can make the strong lobby and hardcore negotiations with the political parties in the European countries, and the Roma community can have a better representations in not only in the European Parliament but also in the European countries, national or the local levels. So what is your take, Hrabanova?
Thank you very much for this interesting question. It's actually not an easy one, but of course, yeah. I would say, you know, I think we cannot speak about. I think that we should really speak about the fact that, you know, these are the basic pillars. This is something that we are building on, something that actually, when I was growing up, I was looking up to, right? Something that kind of an inspiration, looking at this mobilization, at the movement that was actually created of this sort of a courage that brought people together to actually agree on things, like there is a flag and anthem, and kind of gathering across the Europe and kind of getting together even during the Cold War. So I think that, you know, for me, this was always, when I was hearing all these stories, it was something that also kind of helped me to grow and to kind of help to create my own identity as a Roma. And especially also because, again, I'm coming from the Czech Republic, and Emil Šťuka was one of the kind of the biggest leader of the ERU in his times. And I remember when he was receiving a red carpet, visiting the presidents of the country. I think back then it was the president of Bulgaria that he received, and he get out of the plane with the red carpet. So I was like, oh wow, we have such a big personalities as well. So I think that this is, and it mobilized us. It also kind of get more voices to be heard, more voices to actually stand up by seeing that these things might be possible. But I think that generally we cannot ask civil society to take this responsibility. Like, we cannot have put that, kind of say that there is a duty of representation, that there is a duty, because everything which is created based on, like, as a civil society, it's on either a volunteering contribution or like certain mobilization, certain aims, certain agreements that the people share, certain vision that the people share, and that the more people are involved, the more different opinions and different ideas are coming in place. You know, very often I also hear that we should be more united when it comes to Roma. You should be united, you should have more voice. And I know that we work towards this unification, and I think it's very important. But in the same time, and then I hope Gretan would not would forgive me, all the others who are here, but also I'm saying very often, like, look, in one political party, where people are already together because of one political opinion, they are either left, center, or right, they still have fights, they have fractions, they have like disagreements, and they already agree, they agree on something. So we cannot really like put this pressure on us, you know, to make sure that we can actually represent all the people and we can have this duty. So I think this is like, maybe I'm saying it also because I'm taking it off my shoulders, because I have these tendencies to mobilize, to create coalitions, to really build a lot together with the people. And I see it's not always possible. So we have to go small steps and really kind of make sure that there is this vision, that there is something that we go along, and then even we agree with our disagreements. And I think that the first point would be to actually acknowledge that we are very diverse communities, that we are very diverse communities. And I know, and now maybe people who are living in the Western Europe, they might say this experience, and I know it from myself, from where I'm coming, I'm used to be just the one Roma group, which is my Roma group. Yeah. And I didn't know other groups so well, or I was told the other groups, it's not good group, that I should not trust them, I should not talk to them, you know? And this is something that when I step out and I start to go to the Europe and I met other Roma, I find out actually I have many friends which are from different groups, and they have amazing people, and they are all my brothers and sisters or cousins. And then actually we share a lot. But we first have to also step out of this bubble that we kind of grow up with. And why I mentioned the Western Europe, it was because now, and in England, for example, there is a 1/4, and you have Roma from Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania. You have everybody in the same place. It may be for the first time these people actually meeting other Roma, and that they are realizing we have the same language, we have the same basis, you know, and it takes time. So we cannot take this as a failure. We have to cherish every attempt, you know, that's actually going that direction and making sure that we continue this. But we also don't put so much pressure on us in doing this. So while running Ergo Network, we have 32 members across all Europe, and we are connecting people based on the same interests. We are fighting the anti-Gypsum. We are trying to be apolitical, but I also see that there is already a power in the network we are having. And we are having a common decisions, we have elections, we have transparency, we are bringing certain models in place, which actually empowering us then to step also into this wider society. So I would actually, celebrate every small achievement that was there and learn from the failures. I think that's what we have to do.
I see that we also have some very prominent people here like Pandit Rishiji and Orhan Galius. So it will be nice to hear their views also. And what Madam just said, and it is wonderful. And I have noted that this tendency, or this, not tendency, rather this active effort to bring together different groups across Europe and maybe across the world. That is an important starting point. Although this is not the first effort or something new, efforts have been made for a long time. I am aware of them. But I think that this continuing effort will be fruitful at some point, and hopefully at this point itself. There are.
Hello.
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you that you were inviting me to say. Well, I know Gabriela Hrabanova from her very early time when she was active. She appeared, and another hope was born actually. And as well, when Ergo was born, I think we started to rethink about grassroots activities. My idea and question to Gabriela directly, I will not talk now about the importance of the language, being united and so on, because we Roma, coming from India and having Indianness, as you said, we have learned that the diversity, that many kind of changes that we are doing, we are relying on this very important say from Sanskrit, the world is one family. This is how Roma learn. It's no matter from where are you. It's matter who you are, and so on. And that's why I believe that International Romani Union has been starting with the Congress that was in 1971. You saw many Roma and so on. Let me come to a question. I don't wish now to talk more because I'm sitting in one restaurant in Serbia. I have a meeting with a Jewish group about what's happened today. I want to share with them. I will share with them actually today, tomorrow, after tomorrow, about peaceful existence in the world and the questions and so. But Gabriela, please tell me how you see situation now, today, that we definitely could have Roma cows at the European Parliament. Is there such group? How to organize that? How much cost this? Because I do sometimes think about the funds you get, how you make a good lobby, and how you see we should have a formal Roma cows group at the European Parliament. Thank you very much. Many greetings to everybody there.
Very nice to hear you, Orhan. Greetings to Serbia. Yeah, Orhan really knows me for a long time. The question, so to have a Roma group, intergroup. At this very moment, it would be, I think it would be difficult to just, again, I'm very blunt the way I'm seeing the thing. So it's that because we are a very small group, and it's not about, it might be about the money as well, but it's also about the political support. Because we are right now, this RD group, it was always considered as a Roma group. Yeah, but because we did everything we wanted to do for Roma, it had a Roma coordinator the last 4 years. So we did a lot, use this group, you know, for the Roma people. But there were also other groups in place. So, but these groups helped us to go to have a greater support. So to have like more support, more people, more politicians joining. If I'm thinking of the cost, so the cost of intergroup, it's practically paying a salary of a one person and the secretariat monthly, you know? So this is the cost. Usually these costs are shared by the members of the parliament. So if we have 3, 4, so they pay less. So the more members of the parliament we have, the less money they need to contribute every month. So instead of them taking one assistant, they would allocate a little bit of their money to this coordinator, and then the coordinator, it's going across the committees and working on the different topics, collecting the information, and of course, kind of gathering the members for a certain agenda. It crossed my mind many times to have a specific Roma group, but I think we are not powerful for it yet. I think we would have to have like stronger presence in Europe, and also not sure if this is really so important, because the alliances with other groups, it's also important, because now we are kind of opening the space for all the minorities, because like there is no colors in the Europe, like on the European Parliament. The European Parliament is white. And this, I think that's why, if we are also engaging with the others, I think it's kind of showing and working in solidarity. And I kind of, appreciate the solidarity. And if we are strong enough within this solidarity group, we can always push for a Roma agenda. So, yeah.
Welcome, Dr. Punita. And can I, Zamirji, should I?
Yeah, you can. If anyone has any questions, I see that the Sylvia is there from, as well as Susan, MSG, and other Andres. So these people also joined. Thank you. Now, Person Ansuju, you can go ahead. Yeah.
So thanks again, Madam, for the information you shared with us, and some things were very exciting. Generally speaking, it was a very optimistic perspective, and there were certain things that came to my mind. Well, one is that this participation, in the European Parliament is going to increase a sense of belonging. And now I think there can be a Roma influence on policies. And most importantly, the influence that we anticipate is on social inclusion, anti-discrimination, anti-racism, what you may like to label it as. And more importantly, on housing, education, employment, such issues. Ultimately, empowerment is something that can bring about a change. And also language, culture, and identity that we discussed in some detail. Stereotyping and prejudice, I think, can also be fought with increasing participation, increasing representation by the policies, and promotion of a more diverse European society will also take place. I mean that it is not going to help, this inclusion and representation is not going to help only the Romas, but also other minority communities, less visible communities, and the parliamentarians who have been elected, they will act as a role model and will be able to bring about a change by example. Also, it will motivate the whole community. There will be a positive mindset, a sense of euphoria of some sort, perhaps. Maybe I will need a milder word for that. and advocacy of human rights for all minorities can take place. Cross-cultural dialogue will be enriched, and policy of minorities and accountability of the governments can increase. But there are certain things that we have to look out for, that they have to be watched. Like there may be a greater backlash of hardliners. This is what I fear. But obviously, this is not something that should desist or that should dissuade participation. We have to go out. We have to be more visible. Then continued marginalization, if it continues, if the things which we are hoping don't take place, then there may be disillusionment and frustration. That is also, I think, we should already anticipate. And it should not remain just a tokenism. The elected members, I hope, are able to do something that is really visible on the ground. And fragmentation may also be one of the risks that has to be anticipated. Fragmentation in the sense that there are different Roma communities, and collective bargaining power, in whatever limited way it may be there, may be weakened because there are different political interests, political ideologies, and parties are involved now. And the impact may be negative if the representatives are not as effective as expected. So these are some of my views, and with good wishes, I end here. And Mr. Zamir, please. And I thank Ambassador Virender Gupta ji also, and Mr. Zamir.
Thank you very much, Prasanansu ji, and I extend my sincere thanks to all the participants who joined this 33 virtual lecture, especially our speaker, Gabriela. She accepted our invitation for delivering the 33rd lecture, especially on the theme, which is very relevant at present, in present time. So I I thank you, all of you, and I expect and look forward to your valuable participation and inspiring participations in our next event or the next lecture. And one thing I would like to, because today in this lecture, our Secretary General, he is out of the country, so he couldn't join. So I would like to also tell you that we are going to organize the conference in the month of November. That's the major international conference on Roma communities in the month of November. And we expect the participations and the democratic participations of Roma communities across, across Europe. So, and the second very important development which I'd like to bring to the notice of Gabriela, that's there is also construction of Roma Memorial going on in Kannauj. The construction of a memorial to commemorate the exodus and dislocation of Roma community from northern India, especially Kannauj, and that memorial is being erected by that's the Culture Ministry, Government of India, in partnership with the Uttar Pradesh government. So we are trying to we are trying to sensitize the people of India about the Roma issues and Roma causes, as well as we are trying to also sensitize the Indian academicians so that the more research, more concrete research and cogent research could be carried out by the Indian scholars as well. As we find that a lot of Western scholars and now the Roma scholars are also gaining moment, they're getting impetus to carry out or conduct research on different aspects of Roma communities. So thank you very much for joining us and motivating us to continue with this lecture series. And I'm sincerely thankful to all of you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next event. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was my pleasure, and thank you for the support for the cause and our individually.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.